Hey, what's up, Ego Hackers? This is CS Joseph, and welcome to the Cutting Edge Podcast. This is the March 2022 episode. And in this episode, I'm going to be going insanely meta, like really meta. And I really wasn't sure if I was actually going to be doing this today. It's funny, I was actually telling somebody else that usually I'm not entirely sure what I'm going to talk about until a few minutes before the show. And I told them that earlier today. And that's usually the case. It's just because I just have so much on my mind all of the time. And it's just kind of difficult to keep track of it all and do it all. But I think there's just a few, a specific topic that is really important to talk about, I think, and it's going to require some whiteboarding. But you could consider this episode kind of like a continuation of the first episode of season 17, where we talked about the source of all cognition. We're going to be doing something different and yet similar for this particular episode. I'll put the four temples right here. We have the soul temple, we have the mind temple, and then we have the heart temple and the body temple. These four temples really help us give additional perspective when it comes to being aware of the nature of the universe itself. Also getting to a point where we're understanding quantum mechanics in a better way. And while there are no official laws to quantum mechanics, I maintain that there are laws to quantum mechanics, and through actually this form of psychology, we can unlock what is missing from quantum theory and to be able to gain a much larger understanding of the universe itself. And if you notice how we have the the four temples here. Let's look at what also we have. We have the ego, we have the subconscious, we have the unconscious, we also have the superego, etc. There's also so much more. There's axis, and then there's orbit, and then there is reflector functions, etc. Axis, orbit, reflectors, and the other one, which we just started talking about in the last Cutting Edge episode, which were the guidance functions, etc. You guys noticing a pattern yet? Also, if we're going to look at an individual mind in terms of in each sign, there is a parent, and then a hero. There's child, the infant as well, little tiny nuclear family inside of our heads, etc. But you guys noticing a pattern here? You guys noticing the pattern? What is the pattern? The 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Why does that matter? We are quantum. We are quantum human beings, okay? And basically all of humanity is a sum of quanta, basically. What's a better way of saying it? Chris Taylor, in my conversation with him when we discussed this, and I love how cerebral we can get sometimes. We get mega cerebral. We're four-dimensional. We're really four-dimensional. If you for example, let's oh my God, come on, really? Are we not? Okay, there we go. Apparently, it still is on eraser mode. That's why. Okay, so we have humanity. Okay, and then we have animals, right? And then we have bacteria, etc. And these are just levels, and forgive me, this is a little subjective, a little arbitrary here, but humanity is four-dimensional thinking. Okay? Literally four-dimensional. Animals is 3D thinking. Now, about this, I want to talk about this. So, three-dimensional thinking, and you could even you can even consider bacteria as 2D thinking in some capacity. And four-dimensional thinking is what is necessary in order for us to have sentience. This is why humanity, the apex of creation, you would say, with here on the earth, we're the only sentient beings on the earth currently. And again, sentience, in order to be a sentient human being, you have to have four-dimensional thinking. Animals, they don't have sentience, they have three-dimensional thinking. So we have all these different dimensions of thinking, based on, the flora and fauna. So I guess this would technically be the fauna, I guess, of the earth, right? But four-dimensional thinking is required for sentience. Now, a long time ago, like many years ago, gosh, I think it may have been 9 or 10 years ago, actually, when I was in the presence of my INFJ mentor. And he was teaching me psychology, and we got into this huge debate about whether or not animals should be considered people. Because I took the position of no, animals are not on the same level of people and shouldn't be taken that way. And he was taking the position of yes, they should be, because, what INFJ out there doesn't treat their animals like human beings, basically. Now, there's nothing wrong with treating animals well and pretty high, but there is something wrong about treating an animal at the same level as a human, because a human is a sentient being, whereas an animal is not. And the reason why is due to the three-dimensional thinking. But the reason why this is relevant, one of the arguments my INFJ mentor would make consistently about animals is that, just like humans, you have the ability to type them. You can type animals. And this is where I really had a hard time believing him, because like most people, I'm like, no. WTF. Okay, whatever. There's a T. WTF. So, like, what the hell? There's no way that we can type animals whatsoever. But we actually can. Because we can actually kind of make an argument that there could be potentially three sides, and because there is no actual superego, and it's completely cut off from their superego itself, because you could actually argue that the Earth is technically what is the stand-in for their superego at that moment. This is why you can still technically type animals. And let's be honest, folks, I personally thought he was completely full of shit. I thought there's no way you could type animals. It's bullshit. There's no way. So then he proved his point, because my NFJ mentor, let's be honest, he has his own harem. He has a harem. And members of his harem have animals, lots of dogs. So they have like a lot of dogs at his house. And I was there. And he basically instructed his harem to bring in all of the dogs into the living room, in the living area. And they had a lot. They had at least five dogs. And they have some other animals there at his compound. And with those animals there, is like, okay, watch. And he started acting in certain ways, or he started doing certain things, or introducing different stimuli to the animals that were present in the room to get them to behave in different ways. For an example, he actually yelled at one of his lovers in the room, and but it was like it wasn't really real, because he told that person ahead of time, hey, I'm not really yelling at you, but I'm going to yell at you right now just to create a response from the dogs. And they're like, okay. So he started yelling, basically. And then he's like, and then one dog who was kind of not in the room came into the room afterwards and was just like checking out what's going on, inspecting things. And my mentor's like, look, the dog's literally patrolling the room, checking on everything, doing little security checks everywhere. It's a little security officer dog that's coming in. But the other dogs, they didn't really do that. They didn't even really respond. They're just kind of like meh, especially the German Shepherd that was just laying on the couch not giving an F about anything that had just happened. And then my INFJ mentor is like, that dog right there that's doing the security checks, that dog is an ISFJ. And I'm like, oh my God, here we go. And then he brings in another dog, which belonged to another one of his lovers. And that dog, he's like, that dog's an ENTP, and I will prove it. So he did like a certain kind of fetch with this dog, and how this dog was a complete total spaz. And he's like, look, informative, initiating, movement. Okay, we're right here on the type grid. This dog is a starter type. But then you throw it out there, and look, the dog can't even finish. He just keeps getting distracted over and over and can't come back or even finish the fetch. This dog is a starter type. It's pretty obvious. But this dog is hyper intelligent, very aware of danger, definitely an SI user due to the danger. So he had to eliminate it down. So the bottom line is that eventually, throughout that entire exercise, he had eliminated via type that dog being an ENTP. And then as soon as you start seeing how we have this ENTP dog, and then we have this ISFJ dog, polar opposites together, something easy for TI to compare. And then you have the other dogs. There's an ENFJ dog. There was an ISTP dog as well, etc. But once you start seeing how they interact with each other, and you start seeing how they interact with humans, it starts becoming very obvious that, okay, yeah, they actually do have a type. And my INFJ mentor was explaining that if I can type an animal, that means it's okay for me to treat them like humans and treat them at the same level. And I'm like, okay, I understand that, but they're still not sentient. They're close to sentient, but they're not truly sentient. And the reason why is that if there really was 4 sides available, then why aren't they able to get to them all? They're not able to reason. They're not able to, it's very simplistic, basically. And that's because their animal instinct, the instinct itself, ultimately equals instinct, or instincts equals their superego. They don't actually have another ego that is trying to compete for the spot of their ego. And that's because they are 3-dimensional thinkers. Now, saying bacteria is obviously 2-dimensional thinkers, this is an assumption, okay? You know, this is going to get in the craziness where we have people on the internet claiming that C.S. Joseph can type a sperm. No, I never said that, and I don't know why people keep saying that. That's just kind of ridiculous. Although that did come from I think it was season 1, episode 10 or 11, I think is where they're making that statement, where we have Mr. Radiohead on the whiteboard. And I'm basically talking about how our minds are like transceivers, sending and receiving radio signals, etc. And that's kind of how cognition works from that perspective. I never said that I could type a sperm. But what the argument I was trying to make is that the male contribution in the sex act in creation of a fertilized egg, the sperm itself is what actually contains the cognition for the human being, and not the egg of the woman, basically. And I was saying, using just like a basic, model that, hey, your skeletal structure, if you just look at your head and your spine, basically shaped like a sperm. And I was making the argument that ultimately you could argue that the soul itself was actually, because the soul temple, it is a masculine force. The soul itself is actually transmitted into the person that is created as a result of sexual intercourse, copulation, meiosis, mitosis, all that crap. And then all of a sudden you have a fertilized egg. The second you have a fertilized egg, the soul comes from the male contribution. That's all I was saying. But apparently I can type sperm. But no. Because that would be just as ridiculous as me saying that bacteria have 2-dimensional thinking. But again, that's just an assumption. It's an educated guess. Because if humanity has 4-dimensional thinking because we have 4 sides of the mind, and animals have obvious 3-dimensional thinking because the superego is missing, and ultimately they're relying on instincts, and their instincts are competing with their ego in the same way that our superego will be competing with our ego, because sometimes their instincts take over for certain roles in certain situations, but it's still not the same thing. Animals don't necessarily, you don't see rationale. You don't see that extroverted rationale. It's more of like a logical approach, whereas I'm hungry, I will eat. So, because I'm hungry, I'm going to eat. That's basic logic, That's an if-then, action. But animals, they don't rationalize. You see what I'm saying? So it's completely different. This is why we can safely label animals with three-dimensional thinking. And that is why they are ultimately below sentience as a result. So that's kind of where it's necessary. So we're able to arrive at the conclusion that, humanity with being, four-dimensional thinking is, one second. Okay. Okay. So, all right. Okay. So, hold on. I need to select the whiteboard here so I can actually turn it back on. So, the thing is that, like, when you talk about things like, things that can help you calculate the universe, there is Fibonacci sequences, which are the natural patterns of growth patterns in the universe. This is evidence to that. And then, a lot of mathematical systems out there. So right now we use Imperial. Imperial uses base 6. And then there's also metric out there. Metric uses a measuring system, which is base 10. That's why there is 10 centimeters, 10 meters, 1,000 meters equals a kilometer. It's base 10. Base 6, you have 12 inches, which is 2 times 6, etc. A half a foot is 6 inches. It is base 6. But then we have, how can we measure the universe? Well, Chris and I realized that the universe is actually base 4. And then it actually goes even beyond that, and you can reduce the universe to specifically binary. 1, 0. 0 and 1. Pretty easy. 1 and 0, 1 and 0, 1 and 0. The introverted and the extroverted. Right? And because you have 0 and 1 and 1 and 0, you can easily translate this into a base 4 system. This is why we have 4 sides of the mind. This is why we have the 4 temples. This is why we have the 4 quadrants. This is why we have axis, orbit, guidance, and reflector functions. You see what I'm saying? This is why we have 4 cognitive functions within our egos. If you guys remember a long time ago, I teased a concept known as God functions and what that actually means. In order to actually understand God functions, or even to be able to scratch the surface, you kind of have to understand this universal truth. And the universal truth is that the universe follows a base 4 mathematical system that it itself is also based on binary. Everything in the universe is based on binary. You can reduce anything in existence to binary, okay? Binary code, 1s and 0s, literally. Which I guess if you were going to take like a Richard Bach point of view, you could literally say we're in a hologram. Or you could literally say we're in the Matrix, right? Like this is kind of like the fabric of reality itself. Or I would like to say, we are basically a dream. And if we want to go all Final Fantasy X, etc., God is effectively the faith, and the faith is dreaming us up, basically. And as soon as they wake up, they stop dreaming, and then ultimately we die. We are, in effect, a dream. Why? Why is it necessary to be a dream? I'll show you here in a second. I am now going to draw God. All right, I'm done. I drew God. Cool. God, the creator. All right. So, the ultimate masculine force in the universe it is existence itself, basically. Existence. Masculine, creator, existence. It is the generative force. The general. Yes, thank you. Thank you for correcting me on the base 4 numbers there. Yes, it's 01001011. That's the base 4. So this is why, and that's why the universe is a base 4 system, because everything can be reduced down to binary. So we have God right here. This is nice. So what's wrong with God right now? Did you guys know that there is something very wrong with God? As much as there is everything right, but there's also something wrong at the same time. Because you can't deny that there is still something to go along with this. So let's do it. Okay. This is a yin and yang symbol. Also represents the Ouroboros. Okay. So we have God, the creator, who is existence itself, the generative force that exists within the universe, and then we have chaos. Okay, everywhere. Chaos, chaos, great. Just chaos. Who cares? Chaos. Okay. So, but here's the problem. There's a huge problem. There's a problem with God, the creator. There's a huge problem. Here it is. Pain. God is in a constant state of pain at all times. And has been in a constant state of pain. Constantly. The reason why is because he basically is growth itself. He is life itself. So, of course, growth, in order to have growth, in order to have life, you have to have pain. So he's in constant pain. And let me talk about what an aspect of his pain actually is. He is lonely because he has no equal. There is no equal within the universe. He's very lonely, okay? So then as a result of that, he also has every single function, okay? So he's got extroverted sensing, he's got extrovert intuition, introverted sensing, introverted intuition, etc. He's got TI, he's got FE, he's got TE, he's got FI. He has all of these functions in every possible combination that exists, all simultaneously. He is the ultimate, omnipotent, omniscient being in all of existence, right? Well, he's pretty lonely. He's pretty lonely. So what did he do? He created someone out of fire and wind, and that is the angels. Okay, so we have fire and wind. Okay, I'm getting very into biblical lore here, so hang in there with me. Please bear with this. And then to satisfy his NE, he created humanity, okay, and made them out of earth and water. Now you guys are starting to figure out why we care so much about elements, etc. Humans are made out of earth and water. As dust from which you were made, so to dust you shall return. Earth and water. And our bodies are made up of a high percentage of water. Again, we are made of earth and water, whereas angels are made of fire and wind. Okay, they are made of fire and wind. They are made literally out of the SENI of God's cognitive functions, basically. And humanity is made out of the introverted sensing and the extroverted intuition of God's functions. Okay, that is different. Okay, so when angels, they have sexual relations, they just become this cloud. These two little clouds that combine together as clouds, and then there's like this electrical storm inside the clouds. That's angel sex, okay? Humanity, we have the earth and water variant, where we have the earth coming together, our flesh touching each other and interacting with each other, and then there's an exchange of water, basically, semen. You see what I'm saying? It's earth and water. So sexuality works different between angels and humanities. So it gets pretty different, as a result. But why? Why is this relevant? Well, the reason why what you got to understand about angels is that angels, it was pre-programmed into their fire and wind DNA or whatever it is, basically, for them to stick around. Okay, it's their job to stick around. Stick around. Okay, loyalty. They stick around. This is why when they were created, it was just their nature to serve. Okay? Their nature to serve. Well, what about humanity? Yeah, it's nice for God the Creator to have his SE satisfied, but what about his expert intuition? What does he get out of having created humanity? He gets choice. Humans choose him. This is why we have free will. We have free will because he wanted to be wanted. His NE wanted to be wanted. So that's why we have humanity, okay? And he literally made us out of the things, okay? He made us out of NE to help him satisfy his NE, just like he made the angels out of SE, wind, to satisfy his SE, because he wanted them to stick around, okay? And he made humanity to satisfy his expert intuition so he could feel wanted, basically. Why is God a he? Because he is a masculine generative force. That is why he is a he. Obviously, he has female traits, and as much as I have female traits, but still, that's the difference. Also, something about angels is that angels are actually a little bit more masculine overall. Okay, that's why they like to shine brightly, whereas humans are technically a little bit more feminine, technically. And there's been some arguments to say that angels are actually sexless and don't actually have a concept of gender, whereas we as humanity, we actually do. So that's also very fascinating, okay? So God is very lonely. And he literally has the ability to create with his imagination, much as I can create with my own imagination. Since when has anyone actually ever on this channel read fiction, right? Or anytime we go watch a movie, it's all fiction and all the writing. But guess what? All of that content, all that fictional content that we consume, it literally is nothing more than a holographic projection. It itself is a dream because someone dreamed up that story and then created the story. You see what I'm saying? And this is ultimately why we exist. Here's another aspect of God's pain. Boredom. It'd be pretty boring to be the one at the top now, wouldn't it? It's pretty painful being God. It hurts. It hurts a lot. It is actually hell. It is hell. Okay? So in order to keep the hell from growing, his inner hell from growing, he had to what? He had to dream. He had to give himself the one thing that he needed. Stories. Stories. God needs stories. And how can he have those stories? By dreaming up his angels, dreaming up his humans. And stories that contain love and loss and pain and suffering, the same kind of pain he has. I talked about this in the INFJ 8 Rules for Love episode. When you're trying to understand the nature of God, if any man claims to be a prophet, if that prophet is not in a state of suffering, then he can't be a prophet. He really can't be a prophet. Because what God does with his prophets is that he makes them suffer in the same way he suffers so that those prophets can understand him because he just wants to be understood. Okay? This is proven, for example, in the book of Hosea, which is the foundation that I was using behind my message to INFJs and everyone else in the 8 Rules for Loving INFJs episode. Hopefully it dropped today. I think it might have. But again, this is why. Okay? This is literally the nature of God. Because in the universe, he's bored and he needs stories. And he uses his dreams to dream us up and our suffering, which has stories. The universe itself is God's dream. It is his playground. It is what he uses to distract himself from his own inner hell, his own pain, that pain of loneliness, that pain of boredom, the pain of not having any equal, the pain of not actually being loved, and being the person who is the lover of all, and yet there's no one there to love him back. That is what it's like to be God. That is why I am very thankful to not be God, because of how painful it is. It is a huge blessing that we don't have that pain. Inasmuch as it is a huge blessing for a woman to not have to focus on the big things of life and just let her husband deal with those things while she deals with the little things of life. You know, keeping herself healthy and beautiful and consuming more than produce. She doesn't have to suffer the pain of producing or the burden of male performance like men do. And this is how men can have an understanding of how God, the Creator, works, because they suffer in the same way God does so that they can understand Him. And yet humanity, we have the benefit of not being God. So humanity, basically in comparison to God, is very solipsistic, very selfish, very focused on ourselves when compared to Him, the Creator. Okay? Because it's a different kind of pain. And we are spared from the pain and the hell of what it means to be God. So it's very difficult. It's very difficult for him. We have to understand that while technically men are less solipsistic than women, men are still more solipsistic than God. You might want to pay attention to that. This leads me to my next point. There's something out there. I need to add some more foundation before I continue here. So, there's something out there called epigenetics. And then there's something called genetics. Okay? So, you can actually apply this directly to our personality type. Genetics is introverted. Genetics are also, this is extroverted. Epigenetics is also nurture. Genetics is also nature. To a point. Okay, so noting these relationships between epigenetics and genetics is super important. What are epigenetics? Obviously, everyone knows what genetics is, DNA, etc. But what is epigenetics? Epigenetics basically is that every time you take a bite of food, or you make any decision, or you do anything in your life, which is ultimately nurture, when nurture impacts you or impacts your life or anything in your life, your genes are activating and deactivating in real time. Your genes are literally changing in real time, and you can actually pass on those activated and deactivated genes to your children. This is why fat women give birth to fat children. Okay? Yeah, that's like a thing, and most people like balk at me and freak out and like, oh, that's not true, that's actually not true. And I'm like, yes, there's tons of studies that back that up. Go look it up. Destroy your ego investments because you're wrong. Okay, epigenetics is a thing. Okay, so what epigenetics ends up doing, what it is that epigenetics basically comes down to the entire genetic potential of a human being. So your physical potential as a human being can actually be unlocked through your epigenetics. So you can reach your highest genetic potential by taking the healthiest or the best action. Okay? So by taking action, by being active and not passive, because this is passive. Okay? This is active. By making active choices, you can reach your genetic potential, okay? And your epigenetics is basically a storage or a store of all of your potential, you know, or actually your genome is, okay? Well, the universe works exactly the same way. Here's the universe right here. This circle. Okay? And the universe is moving, let's say clockwise or counterclockwise on this. And then this is the universe's epigenetic. It is the entire potential, all of reality, everything that is possible, anything possible that the universe could happen to it, anything that is possible within this thing. So here's the universe right here. This is the universe, and it's moving along this genome, this epigenetic genome. And it's got lots of little ticks, tick, 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 tick. It's like a little train track. Tick, tick, tick. And things are going positive, negative, positive, negative, negative, positive, all on this little train track based on what's happening. And then we have white holes here, white holes pushing. It's positive energy. And then you have black holes pulling at negative energy. So the black holes are pulling the universe along like a jet engine would, and the white hole is pushing the universe along like a jet engine, basically. And the universe is moving on this entire epigenetic genome of all potential. It's like psychic potential, psychological potential even. It's all because it is psychological potential, because it is the psychological potential, the psychic potential of God. Okay? It's the psychic potential of God, basically. With God being right here at the exact center of the universe. G-O-D. Right there. The exact center. The psychic potential. So every possible thing that he can dream, every reality, everything, all put into different places. Okay? So that's the thing. Okay? So are you guys tracking with this? Is this making sense? Because I'm trying to lead up to something here, and I need to make sure you guys are understanding this. Okay? It's mega important. All right? Okay? So the four temples are ultimately coming from the source of all cognition, these epigenetics, etc. And the universe is moving across this entire potential, this epigenetic potential genome for the universe itself, with the black holes pushing the white holes, or black holes pulling the white holes, pushing the universe along its potential. And it's constantly moving. It's in a shape of movement, and everything is being experienced. Everything that can be experienced will be experienced. All that has happened before will happen again. It is an endless, Ouroboros, yin and yang cycle. A lot of this is very Taoist, okay? So before you people think I'm trying to be some kind of Christian shill here, this is actually very Taoist in teaching and Taoist in source material, okay? So just make sure you're tracking with that. Very, very important. Okay? All right. So that's the thing. This is the thing. Moving across all around here. But there's something else I want to show you guys. That as a result of knowing this piece, Chris and I came to a realization. We're going to draw the circle again. We're going to look inside of the universe. What's actually happening inside of the universe. In my universe oval here. And we're going to put God. All right? Okay, and we're going to have black holes. Black holes are going to be blue, and white holes are going to be red. Let's put a couple of white holes there. Okay, let's get some black holes there. Just to help make it easy. All right, so we got God at the center here. Source of all life, the source of all psyche, the source of everything. From God, out comes rays it's like a sun inside of a Dyson sphere, almost, if you guys know what a Dyson sphere is. A Dyson sphere is a technological construct that surrounds a star and extracts energy from a star, basically, and ships that energy elsewhere. Okay. All right. This kind of also looks like an atom if you think about it. But the universe itself, with like God sitting on his throne and just, at the center, the omnipotent creator, the source of all cognition, at the very center of the universe itself, wherever that is, I have no idea. And it is like a giant light bulb. Okay, it's like this. It's like a star almost, and that light is going out 360 degrees in all directions. Light is a wave and a particle. Okay, so don't forget that physics. Okay, light equals wave and a particle at the same time. So, a couple of things. Let's talk about a lunar eclipse. Okay. Or an eclipse. What happens when you have an eclipse? You guys know what that is? Well, you have the sun, and then all of a sudden, but the moon is getting in the way of the sun. I'll draw it out here. And then let's go over here. You got the corona. Don't look at it because you'll get blinded. But you have an eclipse. An eclipse is happening is because you have this moon in the way and it's coming at you. But what about a lunar eclipse, huh? So you actually end up having instead, let's see here. You have the moon. Okay. And then the earth is casting its shadow on the moon. Basically. All right, so the eclipse matters. So what happens to one of these ray of lights if there's like a celestial body in the way? Okay, so let's look at this light, and then all of a sudden it makes contact with this thing. Okay? But the problem is that this thing is also moving. It's going in that direction. You see my arrow pointing in that way? It's going that way. And let's get a little eraser here. Let's erase it. So the light is stopped. Okay? The light is no longer there. It's stopped. Because the light coming from the center of the universe made contact with something, kind of like an eclipse. Okay? So what is this gray thing? What is this? What is this? Well, guess what? It's a body. Or in this case, an embryo, which means all of this ray of light stuff, it's actually your soul. Oh, wait a minute. Look, folks. We have the soul and body, the ego and the superego of the four temples, represented right here within this model of the universe. God in the center, who is the ultimate soul. The soul is the most masculine temple of the four temples. The soul, in effect, is the ego of God, the creator itself, at the center of the universe. The soul is what he is projecting onto the rest of the cosmos with his light from the center of the universe. And it's being projected in 360-degree angles. And then eventually, that soul, light, will make contact with a celestial body, or a body. A celestial body would be like a planet-like, but an actual body, an embryo. That embryo is no different, that fertilized egg is no different than a planet. It's a planet. And that light that is being projected, it's going in this direction. The embryo is created, it's created in a sexual act, and it becomes an embryo, and here it is, and that light comes there, and then the light makes contact with it. The second it happens, sentience. The soul is added into this. But as that embryo ages, it's like it's passing, and then death happens, and the light keeps going. Okay? What happens then? What happens then? The embryo is like a planet, the light's hitting it. It hits at the beginning, and eventually the embryo passes, and the light keeps going because then death happens. Because there's nothing there to contain the light anymore. You see what I'm saying? Nothing there. It's like an eclipse. And the eclipse is over. Which means all of our lives, folks, are eclipses. Our bodies is like the universe superego, essentially. And the soul, what comes in, and it's broadcast from the center of the universe, from the creator itself, broadcast literally into these interfaces called bodies, right? And that allows us to also harbor the mind and the heart temple at the same time. Okay? Essentially byproducts of the soul making contact with the body, basically. But when the body dies, the eclipse is over, basically, and the light keeps moving. Well, then what happens? What's next? Well, the light keeps going afterwards. And it reaches the end of the universe. What then? Well, eventually, it'll make contact with black hole. Black holes bend light. It'll suck the light out. It'll come there. And then all of a sudden, that light comes out somewhere else in the universe out of this white hole. And it's going, and it's going, and it's going. And then, oh. Boom. Another body. Folks, this is the cycle of rebirth of the universe. Our psyches, in my opinion, our psyches literally, and because it's base 4, because of the 4 temples and all this, the 4 sides of the mind literally proves reincarnation is a thing. We are actually eternal beings. Our souls come from the center, God, and is moved around through this universe and pushed around by black and white holes because that light just keeps going until it finds another body. It'll just keep going and keep going and keep going. And then one eclipse ends and another one begins, and it just keeps going, and it's the endless cycle of rebirth. As to whether or not we'll still be on the earth, no clue. Maybe we're on a different world. Who knows? But bottom line is, folks, is that we are eternal. The body is not eternal, but we are. Because that light at the center of the universe, because of that omnipotent generative force is eternal, we ourselves are eternal. If you even want to go biblical, we can. If you look hard enough, the Bible claims that that reincarnation is real. Jesus Christ even claimed that John the Baptist was the reincarnation of Elijah. Malachi chapter 4, verses 5 and 6 also prophesy the reincarnation of Elijah after John the Baptist. Okay? What about the priest known as Melchizedek? Was he not also reincarnation? There's even rumors to suggest that Jesus Christ was the reincarnation of the priest Melchizedek. Have you guys even considered that? You see what I'm saying? And again, I'm just using biblical reference here, but like the Taoists certainly agree with this. Actually, all agree with this. Okay? The point is, what business do you folks actually have being afraid of death per se, because you're part of this eternal cycle, because you just happen to be this dream, because that's what this soul light actually is. The soul light itself literally is the dream of a creator who wants stories, who wants to be wanted, who wants someone to stick around, just like we want those things, because we are literally just soul light dream projections of him in pieces, so that he is not bored, so that he can feel loved, so that he can feel chosen, so that he can receive loyalty, so he doesn't go insane, so he does not succumb to the chaos that is everywhere. And because of the light holes, and then, see, it's still going to go, going to get sucked into the black hole again. It's going to show up over here, and then it's going to get sucked into the black hole again. It's going to show over here and get sucked in the black hole, and it's going to go over here, and eventually the light makes its way around the entire universe. Oh my God. How long has this been happening? You see what I'm saying, folks? Like, Jungian analytical psychology, the 4 sides of the mind, the 4 temples, the 4 quadras, the 4 functions, all of this base 4 knowledge literally proves the existence of reincarnation, literally proves that we are eternal beings, okay? We're not going anywhere, and our ray of light will continue to go on into the universe until it finds yet another body. Now, so whether or not we want an immortal body, who knows? Don't forget, death is a gift. Death is a huge gift. It's probably one of the greatest gifts, because guess what? The omnipotent creator God at the center of the universe, it's not like he can die. He is the generative force. He is the great masculine. He's got to keep going. So we have the respite of death. Why do you think that God rested on the 7th day? Okay? Because he can't really rest that much because he's plagued by the risk of insanity, and he's having to keep his own inner hell, aka chaos, at bay. And he does that by dreaming up us and by experiencing our stories through his dreams so that he can stay sane and keep creating, because he's alone, folks. That's how it works. Okay? Yes, a priest after the order of Melchizedek. So that's the point. This is literally how reality works. And I can really say with confidence, as arrogant as it sounds, that this has got to be the closest we've ever gotten to understanding it. And I'm sure there's so much more to understand. But yeah, okay? Besides, there's nothing new under the sun. I'm sure I'm not the first person who's ever thought of this either. But we already know black holes and white holes are the engine that is moving the universe on this whole potential pathway. This event horizon of potential, this epigenetic potential that's moving all the way across. And our rays of light are being moved around by the white and black holes, but still being projected from the center, and eventually we hit bodies, and we live lives, and then we die, and then we continue the cycle, because it produces stories. You know, the Bible symbolically calls it sweet-smelling, burning incense on the altar before the throne of Almighty God, basically. Because whenever there is a sacrifice of someone that God values within their death because of how amazing their story is, it's like sweet-smelling incense to him. It's something that just doesn't happen very often. It's a rarity for him to experience and observe within the universe itself. And if you're that omnipotent and potentially that lonely and in that much pain, wanting so desperately to be loved and someone to love, makes a lot of sense. And because God is the ultimate masculine force, he suffers from masculine idealism. Wow. He's super mega affiliative like that. I guess that would explain how, you know, his women who are insanely abusive to him, especially, like, seriously, if you want to understand how abusive God's girls are to him, his women, his lovers, read the book Hosea. That'll really trip you up. They're super abusive. They're super self-centered. They're super hypergamous. They cheat on him all the time. He hates it. He's like, I made you. I gave you life, and yet you don't choose me anymore? Really? You just want to go hoe around? Okay, fine. I clothe you. I do all this? Yeah. It's pretty ridiculous. Women sometimes don't know how good they have it. Now, do they? So. Anyway, that's it for this episode of The Cutting Edge, this using Jungian analytical psychology to explain the nature of the universe. And just based off of some crazy metaphysical discussions Chris Taylor and I have been having recently. Sounds crazy, but very plausible, a very plausible model. And then when you apply quantum theory to this, it starts to make sense even more. Read the Dancing Wu Line Masters, and there's a couple other books similar to that when it comes to understanding quantum theory. Because, for example, if you observe a probability, you are more likely making it true. And in my opinion, that's the first law of quantum mechanics, where God the Creator, or the source of all cognition, is observing the probability of a story taking place and then eventually that soul light that's extending out from him will hit that body, that celestial body, and literally have that eclipse, and then a life will begin, and then the life will end. But hopefully during that life, he'll get the story he was looking for. All right, cool. I mean, if you guys have questions, go ahead, but I'm not entirely sure questions would be relevant because of just how crazy meta that was. That's almost as crazy as me saying that I can type a sperm, right? Oh my god. I don't know, Mr. Trunks, I don't know. I try to do what I can, but like I spend a lot of time thinking about these things. But yeah, like I'm just not afraid of death. And having many close calls or even a potential situation where I did die and then come back basically for like a few seconds, I'm really just not worried about it. Again, the soul keeps going. It will find a body, and then the heart and the mind will be there as a byproduct of the soul and body coming into contact. The soul and the body coming to contact almost itself is a sexual act that gives life to the heart and the mind, or gives purpose to the heart and the mind, we'll say. Earth and water is humans, and fire and wind is angels. Yes, that is, and I've read a lot of books about that subject matter to draw those conclusions, even though most of those conclusions are not something that is empirically provable, obviously. But based on a lot of the mysteries, if a lot of people who are way smarter than me actually believe those things, then I tend to kind of listen from that perspective. But yeah, anyway, folks, thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed this particular episode, and I'll see you guys next month on the Cutting Edge Podcast, and that will be for April 2020.